Let's speak to Nicholas Williams, who's a Senior Associate Fellow of the European Leadership Network, a former senior NATO official, and William B. Taylor, who's a former US Ambassador to Ukraine. Evening, both of you. Thank you for being with us. Nicholas, can I start with you as a former NATO official? What do you make of this idea of an Article 5-like security guarantee for Ukraine?
Well, I think it's problematic. If it's an Article 5-like security guarantee, what does that mean? Does it mean a planning and a structure in order to give credibility to this Article 5-like guarantee? Or is it just something on paper? I mean, in the Cold War, there was something called the Western European Union for European countries who had an Article 5-like guarantee to each other, but it didn't function because it wasn't backed up by credible military structures, planning, and capabilities.
The crucial bit, I guess, Nicholas, is that Steve Witkoff feels that Vladimir Putin would agree to it, which feels, given Vladimir Putin's resistance to anything that even smells a little bit like NATO, could be significant.
Well, I think he would agree to it, provided that it's credible, and I think the debate in this afternoon by the coalition of the willing, I think, exposed that. What does an Article 5-like guarantee look like? And so those who are supposed to give the guarantee are asking, is the United States going to be part of the guarantee? And if not, it's a worthless guarantee.
William B. Taylor, former US Ambassador to Ukraine, what's your take on that idea?
So talk of security guarantee is really important, Daryl. And it's gotten serious over the past couple of days. President Trump has talked about security guarantee. Now we've got Steve Witkoff talking about an Article 5 kind of an agreement. I have to be a little skeptical. Mr. Witkoff knows a lot of things, but not a lot about Russia or Article 5. And he's made some mistakes over the past week as well. So I think we need more information. But as I say at the first day, it's good that we're talking about security guarantees. Ukrainians do need security guarantees if they're going to agree to a ceasefire, which we should talk about, because that should be the goal. But a security guarantee is going to be important for that.
Nicholas, where do Europe sit on territory? I mean, we heard earlier from Emmanuel Macron saying that international law and territorial sovereignty have to be respected. We've heard tonight from the government a slight shift on the position, handing the ball to Zelensky on this, suggesting that he should decide. But ultimately, European leaders must have a decision. I mean, it is their continent that would be redrawn if some of Ukraine went to Russia.
Well, I think they were very opposed and very skeptical of this, what emerged from the Witkoff meeting with Putin in Moscow, that there would be a territory swap, because in effect it would mean swapping Ukrainian territory for Ukrainian territory. And so, yes, the British government has made this slight adjustment in language, but that's because it's the logic of the UK insisting one thing and possibly Zelensky agreeing one thing had to be reconciled. So it's on Zelensky, because the UK believes and the Europeans believe nothing can be agreed without Ukraine. But the Europeans are encouraging Ukraine to hold firm.
William, just take us to the practicalities of tomorrow. You've been in the room when these events happen. Just how important is it as a spectacle?
Well, it is a spectacle, Daryl. But let me go back just one thing on this swaps, because Nicholas is exactly right. These are not swaps. This is Ukrainian territory and Ukrainian territory. So we're not talking about swaps. But an important concept that might make sense and might be a way forward is to recognize that there's a distinction, there's a difference between acknowledging that the Russians own or illegally occupy 19% of Ukraine. That's a fact. That's de facto recognition that they are there. De jure, legal recognition that the Russians own 19% is a totally different thing. President Zelensky will not, I'm convinced, I'm certain that President Zelensky will not accept de jure, legal understanding of, recognition of that territory, that 19% going to Russia. He won't.
Yeah.
Nor should we.
As he keeps reminding us, he's constitutionally forbidden from doing so.
He's constitutionally forbidden, but it's also just makes no sense. It makes no sense for him to recognize that, or anyone to recognize. And so the British government, I hope, is not moving in that direction, because he won't. Zelensky won't. Now, Zelensky might say, okay, we understand that for now, temporarily, until something happens to Putin or whomever, we acknowledge the Russians are there. De facto, but that's not the same as de jure. That's not the same as legal recognition.
Okay.
Now, you talk about the spectacle for tomorrow. It is a spectacle, and I think both sides have learned a lot from the previous spectacle, and I don't look for any repetition of that kind of disaster.
Yeah. Okay. How does Trump play this then, Nicholas? Do you think? I mean, is he does he go the opposite direction? Is he sort of as kind and friendly as he can be?
Well, the Europeans are doubling down on their strategy, which revealed itself weak in Alaska, of trying to persuade Trump to be firm against Putin. Now, following Alaska, Trump has edged towards Russia and come up with an idea which is favorable to Putin, which he agrees with. And I think that the Europeans will double down and say, look, these are the consequences of what Putin is suggesting to you.
Right.
And I don't know where President Trump will jump to, because he's all over the place. But I suspect he is a realist, and he'll say, well, this is the best deal that Ukraine can get. This is the best deal that anyone can get. And if the Europeans want to question it, then the Europeans can go it alone.
Okay. Just briefly, William, I'm already over time, but I just want to slip this question into you. What does, for Europe and Ukraine, success look like tomorrow?
Success looks like what they agreed to last week, Daryl. They agreed last week that they would make a ceasefire the goal. And they had convinced President Trump of that. President Trump agreed. And then, as Nicholas just said, President Trump went in, listened to Putin, came out with a different story. Success is going back to that issue of ceasefire. Okay. And there can be discussions about de facto recognition of that ceasefire line. But that would be a success. Get to a ceasefire and don't talk about these long-term arrangements that are going to take years to conclude. Okay,
really interesting, both of you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Appreciate it. William B. Taylor, who is a former US ambassador to Ukraine, and Nicholas Williams, who's a senior associate fellow of the European Leadership Network, a former NATO official as well, with us on Times Radio.